You know, I've been on a bit of a Larry Fessenden kick lately, either intentionally or just by circumstance. I really wanted to talk about the movie Late Phases, which has a cameo from the man, and his name is in the produced by section. This led to one of our channel favorites in Danielle Harris wishing that more people knew about a movie that she did called Stakeland. While this had a 6 degrees of separation angle attached to it with Late Phases star Nick D'Amici also starring and writing Stakeland, it also happened to bring back Fessenden in his comfortable producer role. Oh, and another cameo, of course. And now we've gone down another rabbit hole and heard from the man himself that The Last Winter is a movie of his that he wishes had been seen by more people. This movie sees Larry not only in his producing and cameo roles, which of course he's known for, but also wearing the hats of director, writer, and editor. We here at Joblo Horror Originals happen to agree with Larry that The Last Winter is one of the best horror movies you never saw. Larry Fessenden is a wonderful writer and director, even if by far and away he has most credits in acting and producing. He started out with short films as early as the late 70s and in 1982 made a short vampire film called The Habit. Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the store tab on any of our Joblo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some. 3 years later, he would create his own production company called Glass Eye Pix that is still around today and churning out movies from both Fessenden himself and the young directors that he mentors. Jim Mickle of Stakeland and Ty West of House of the Devil, among other things, are two of the directors that he's mentored and taken a chance on. On the acting side, he's worked with high-profile directors such as Jim Jarmusch and the legendary Martin Scorsese. As one of the big gamer guys here at Joblo, I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention his role in one of the greatest horror games that also plays out like a choose-your-own-adventure horror film. Of course, I'm talking about Until Dawn. Now, why are we talking about Larry so much before we get into the movie, you ask? Well, let me explain. Larry is maybe the closest thing that we have to a modern-day Roger Corman, and I say that with all due respect. Let's look at it. Low-budget movies that take on lives of their own? Check. Giving aspiring directors a chance that could end up jump-starting nice careers for them? Check. Being much more known as a producer than a writer and director, which of course he is more than capable of? Check, check, and check. While the comparison is a clear one, Fessenden doesn't just hold Corman's torch, he took it and lit his own fire that still burns brightly today. The Last Winter is only his 5th feature film as a director, but it takes everything that he had learned from producing and working with other creators and he makes it work perfectly. While it's an environmental horror movie at heart, it also takes the Wendigo lore from his previous movie starring Jake Weber, appropriately called Wendigo. The Last Winter was partially inspired by the true story of the Shackleton expedition, but it does have enough yelling and paranoia that you can see the influence from The Thing as well in all the right ways. It was originally conceived as a group consisting of Muslim and non-Muslim factions having to work together. As politically charged as that would have been, Fessenden and co-writer Robert Lever turned it into big corporate versus the environmentalist, which works perfectly.
Really?
The movie falls under the little seen and rarely executed well environmental horror category that includes such wonders as The Bay and Prophecy. Lever has only written this movie and 2015's Amok, but his skills in writing are clear from this movie alone. The movie opens with one of the employees from the Kick Corporation getting ready to head out onto the frozen tundra of Alaska as he has a promotional video playing of his own company rolling in the background. This employee, Max, is played by Zach Gilford, which I didn't notice back in the days of Blockbuster, but it is unmistakable now. Not only is he one of our favorite quarterbacks from Friday Night Lights, but he's also inserted himself nicely into the Mike Flanagan troupe of actors, starting with his wonderful turn in Midnight Mass. The next morning, a very small plane lands to drop off site boss Ed Pollock, who is played by the great Ron Perlman. Perlman was sought out by Fessenden after seeing him light up the big screen as an unconventional superhero in Hellboy. Perlman is not new to horror in both the main and indie scenes, with roles in things like Blade 2 and Kronos, among many others. Pollock is on site to make sure both operations are going smoothly, and to check out his government liaisons who he has both some control over, but also would rather be able to play nice with. We get to meet the rest of the crew, which include Elliot and Hoffman, who are the environmental team, as well as Abby, Motor, Lee, and Dawn. They seem to get along like a team stuck together in a place that feels like it has no escape. There's a clear division between the work crew and the environmental team as well, except for Hoffman and Abby, who are sleeping together. We get some built-in tension as we quickly learn that Abby and Pollock also used to be romantically involved. Abby is played here by Connie Britton, who coincidentally is also the main character from Friday Night Lights, but her horror output also includes the Nightmare on Elm Street remake and a run on American Horror Story. Hoffman is played by James LeGros, who Fessenden is a big fan of. He's been around since the early 80s, and I noticed him as Roach in Point Break, but he also has done horror like Phantasm 2 and the Psycho remake. Strange things start to happen as members of the team start seeing or hearing strange things out from the frozen tundra, including what looks like sounds of galloping hooves. Hoffman seems tired and on edge and won't sign off on Pollock's plan as it'll hurt the surrounding area, even though the company pushes its own agenda.
Wipe your face. You're pathetic.
Max goes missing during the day, and when they're about to go out and get him, he shows back up at base with his tracker clocking an outlandish 300 miles. Pollock has pulled his political strings to get Hoffman removed from his post, and the tension continues to rise. What the movie does incredibly well is use its character building and slow burn atmosphere to catch you off guard when it seemingly decides to change genres from political intrigue to just flat out horror. The catalyst is in finding what is essentially found footage followed by a body that nobody expects to look like it does. It's good stuff. The close quarters of the base, juxtaposed with the blinding white and seemingly endless outdoor areas, create a sense of confusion, claustrophobia, and even an overwhelming sense of loss in all the right ways. While most of the horror is seen on screen, be it from characters going crazy and killing each other or horrific accidents like a plane crash, the real horror is seen in the mind of one man, Hoffman, who is supposed to be a world-renowned brain on all things environment and what humans are doing to the earth, has clearly broken. His partner finds his journal, and it's an erratic mess of scribbles, fear, and paranoia that warn of the titular last winter, where Mother Nature has decided to fight back and clean its surface for good. This ties into the Wendigo angle of the film too, as that is a spirit manifestation of fighting back. While Fessenden aimed for it to be seen as not literal monsters and all in Hoffman's head, the other events that happen are too physical and real for it to only exist inside of Hoffman. The last third of this movie plays out at a much more brisk pace than before, and we get a combination of paranoia, beliefs, and selfishness that usually ends up being the downfall of mankind. Is it just the Arctic base and the surrounding area, or is it truly the last winter? The score, cinematography, and yes, editing from Fessenden himself all stand out from start to finish, and the cast excels with great acting performances all the way around. The movie came out in 2007 though, and that was a busy year for both mainstream horror and smaller scale fare as well. You got things like I Am Legend, 28 Weeks Later, The Mist, and new entries in both the Saw and Hostel franchises on the bigger side, and on the smaller side we got things like the Poughkeepsie Tapes, Rogue, and Feast, which seemed to last longer on the independent side. The movie was released in theaters on the festival circuit in September of 2006, and then received a small wider release in September that following year. Its budget was $7 million, which is not bad when you include the actors and all of the places that they shot, but sadly it only made $33,000 domestically, and an additional $64,000 internationally. That sub 100K total would seem like a failure, but it did receive great reviews from those that saw it, and I remember being a huge proponent of this movie when we got our 4 copies at Blockbuster. It was an easy recommend, and I was happy when people came back and found it to be fun and something different. And fun and different seems to be Larry's stock in trade. Even when he makes vampire or werewolf movies, which he was heavily inspired by the Universal monsters, or if he's making straight horror movies involving the tale of the Wendigo, you will still get something a little bit different each time. While it's easy to recommend nearly anything he puts his name on, The Last Winter fell through the cracks more than most. Give Larry a little more peace of mind and check out this movie so you can cross it off of the best horror movies you never saw.